All right, so actually I need to prepare my setup a little bit. So let's make sure I'm not using experimental hops versions that don't exist yet. We get back on regular vanilla hops, same hops as you. We're all on the same hops. All right, there we go. And my next wallpaper would have been offensive. And my next wallpaper would have been offensive. And my next one, it would have been all right. All right. So let's get in here. So today's example is actually about Inset. In my first demo, I talked about how Inset can be used to protect a perimeter, but in the case that it was being used, I felt it was being used incorrectly. So today's example is going to involve creating another double curve situation like so, and we'll just apply that to mesh and get the auto smooth just right. And so this is where we start with things. And then of course I like to quarantine an area by putting some wire down just to isolate this. Also we can see that the auto smooth got messed up a little bit. Let me add that to my list of things. Geez, I got one note telling me about conflicting changes. I don't even want to deal with that. Get out of here, one note. All right, too early in the morning for that. I actually did a couple of rehearsals on this just earlier, just to see. It's kind of crazy seeing weld just evaporate everything. And I think for this example, I kind of went a little hard on the weld. In fact, we could see it right there where I just kind of jumped the shark a little bit. So the purpose of this video is to show how you can just convert the geo to mesh. We'll use sharpen, which will just mark everything, as which I always use hops. And so we'll just grab these edges and do an inset here, which will give us a nice spacer. And then we can select this whole top area. We'll just continue and circle select and select this area. We'll also do the same. So with this, we can now, control shift to recalculate, resharp, which basically will undo all the markings and mark it again based on our mesh modeling here. But now we actually are able to bevel this shape because we've given it a very nice perimeter very quick. And so this is just one way that I tend to get around with modeling. However, of course, this does turn into a topological study where we talk about just kind of using these interiors that we've created to really get the shape that we want to create. So, I could get in here and just show myself solving topo as usual, just getting in here, just working the edge, every other edge, by the way. And we'll just connect it there. And we can also probably create a vert here and just Control Shift B, bevel that out a couple of times to just give ourselves some geometry. And we could just start solving. And the thing is with this sort of process is you gotta kind of train your eye to see what's actually important and ignore the things that you are about to go in and dissolve. In fact, you want to make sure that before you dissolve anything that they get handed off so their surface continuity gets maintained. For example, right here, we're about to break some surface continuity, which is almost worse than getting efficient topology. That's why it's a battle. It's a battle between getting the geometry to flow just right while also keeping the surface and the double curvature that we're dealing with at this point. So it is a very tricky situation, but if we come out, we can see that we almost did good, and probably dissolving that one will take us back to where we need. We'll change our auto smooth, and we look at this side that we treated very quickly and kind of haphazardly. I mean, we could do it better where we just, you know, send it all the way down, downtown, maybe straight down. And we can even bring this across and then bring it up to just connect it to the nearest junction area. And we'll do the same with bringing this one down. And we can see that we got a pretty nice thing going on this side. However, you know, anytime geometry is close together, it's going to be flagged to me as problematic. So I'm always cautious when it comes to geometrical convergences, because they can cause just as much issues as having just bad topology. But we can, you know, clean this up a little bit, just slide this up, and you know, we're only 6 minutes into this video, and that is the intended result. Of course, this type of level shape can't take subdivision, but it is made to be able to take basically Boolean and bevel, and that is the goal of our general workflow. I mean, at this point, this shape is cleaned up enough for me to begin getting in here with box cutter and just begin cutting on the next level of shape and just playing with angles, you know, maybe slap it with an auto smooth, weighted normal, and really just get in here and just start destroying things and creating damage. So sometimes I repair topology just for the purposes of creating a kind of support system for using booleans on subsequently, which probably is quite painful to see, but results in a different type of art. You know, my goal isn't this perfect topology. My goal is this type of art. I'm an artist. I want to get a very nice result. In fact, we'll mirror this to the other side, and we see that, you know, as far as study goes, this was our base shape. This is what we have created. So I think I got my rehearsal round in to do this demo. There's not a lot to it. I mean, Inset is an easy lesson. However, if I were to make this subdivision capable, that is another story. In fact, I could talk about just hacking subdiv in this video, where I say, hey guys, you know, you can just add modifier, triangulate, you know, maybe make sure that your triangulate is not below your weighted normal, which appears to have happened. And then you can press Control-1 to begin adding your subdiv, and you'll see the areas that fell because of your lack of effort. So, you know, sometimes solving with the most minimal of geo will give these areas guidance. So I'm always experimenting in exactly how much geo it takes to get an adequate solution when it comes to these sort of solves, because you can really mess yourself up by trying to convert too soon. However, we see with just a little bit of very sparse supporting geometry, just explaining what's going on there, that we're able to now take this up to sub D level 2, which is just nonsense at this point. I mean, we look at the geometry, it's completely destroyed. I mean, we are letting sub D solve for areas, but I guarantee you that everything you're looking at is a quad. Not a single try is present. However, this geometry is a lie compared to what is actually being created, which is this. We could take this back down to sub D level 1, which we can just kind of analyze, but I generally am not modeling for subdivision, so using it is just a professional courtesy. But if I were wanting to export it, then maybe triangulate would be my go-to choice to ensure that this makes it all the way over to ZBrush without issue. In fact, looking at it in a viewport, I can know exactly what I'm going to get if I were to paste it into ZBrush for a little Dynamesh action. So let's bring up the Camtasia to recorder, lower the window just a bit, and let's see, I'll save this as mtest. And I actually did an mtest just before I began recording. I'll bring it up after the text fades out. I got my fade time at 10 seconds just for the purposes of tutorials with you guys. But if we bring up the previous example, which this one's 10, this one's 11, This one was another one where I basically went in and began experimenting with this inset technique on a more complicated shape in a more troublesome situation, just to kind of analyze the result. And I was able to get something pretty good. However, this is a pretty difficult study, but it is one that I recommend everyone gives a try because, you know, really at the end of the day, you have to ask yourself, how big is this thing? Is this thing going to be zoomed in and cameras just rolled across it? I mean, of course, everybody wants that, especially when you have a very pretty model. But I mean, for the most part, I look at most of these things as kit bash elements. So it's not the biggest thing in the world to me. So let's record the single take of this video in a single take. So got my water. We'll take the whole anxiety watch off for this. Makes it easier. Always get phone calls. So crazy. Never a good phone call ever. Unlike YouTube comments. Sometimes I get good YouTube comments, but never get a good phone call. I wouldn't want a phone call anyways, being like, hey, your latest video, awesome. Just kidding. So let me roll up my sleeves for this one. All right, squeeze the cat for good luck, and let's do this. All right. Let's just start humming. Boom, boom, boom. All right. Hello everyone, Master Xeon1001 here, and in this video I wanted to do a topological study, kind of doubling back to the inset, which was the first topic I was talking about with the spherical help that I was providing previously. So with our cube, we're going to look at it in front view, and I'm just going to tab into edit mode, grab this single front edge, and I'm just going to bevel it till we get a nice big bevel. Ashley, are you creeping around the door? Maybe I'm hearing ghosts. All right, so with this edge selected, we'll go into front mode, rotate the view a couple of times using numpad 2. I'll press D, draw a box, press B to bevel, and we'll just roll that up a couple of times. Keep in mind that I'm determined to put this curvature on the curvature of this box in order to make this as painful as possible. So now we have created this shape, this roundy round on round town on a planar shape. So this is an interesting type of topological conundrum. So this one can best be solved with a little bit of bevel. First I shift clicked sharpen in order to get my auto smooth just right. In fact, we can press Ctrl A and make this geometry to mesh. However, before that, let's talk about the weld. So first I will draw a box. However, before that, let's choose the knife toggle in the top bar, and we will just draw a box around it. And with that created, we'll just fix our shading and go under modifier and add a weld. And with the weld, we can kind of scroll the wheel and just see weld just really eating the curvature. So weld can be good in some cases. In fact, shading wise, this would almost be acceptable. However, if we look at the wire, we've lost a pretty good deal of our integrity, and the continuity of what we were going for with this cut was kind of taken away. So let's talk about an easier way. So we will just Control A, make geometry real, and the first thing we'll do is sharpen it. In my case, I have my sharpen option set to mark crease, mark seam, mark bevel weight, mark sharp, as I typically do. And that has put a nice perimeter border aside from this one edge, which doesn't meet the angle threshold. So we'll just mark that manually. And now with this area kind of quarantined, I can just go into 3 and just select this area in face mode. By pressing I can inset this area and just kind of offset the pain that I'm about to experience with this. And we can also do the same with the outside, where we just, instead of selecting the whole outer boundary, we'll just select the inner area that we created with the knife previously in order to set us up for this. And we will just press I in order to offset that area as well. So now we've created this flowing area of topology just being having a continuity unlike the area previous. In fact, we see that we kind of broke it a little bit in this area, so let's actually try that again, and we'll go for something not so devastating. So now comes the area where we do just a little bit of solving, and for the purpose of this, I'll actually turn on auto merge, just for the people out there who wonder why I never use auto merge. So with this one, we will just deselect and just slide these in where they need to go. This one is a harder choice. However, due to the area that we've created, we can actually begin knife cutting to begin working our way around it. It's important to not double click, or else you'll create a small double situation when using the knife. So we'll converge here, and then we'll start the great merging process here. And we press enter, and while this looks a little skewed, it only looks skewed to the uninitiated. We press J here, we select this edge, create it right in between, select these two, and now we have an area we can begin cleaning up. Just quick dissolve, and we're done. So we continue moving, and just looking at what we have, this area, we can just start making some hard choices because we're already quarantined. This area is a bit of a harder choice, but we'll jump here. This area, hard choice, we'll jump here. Hard choice. However, it's a harder choice if you don't quarantine the area based on previous tests. I always run these through a couple of demos. Shout out to the Extended Cut gang. But I always like to experiment with different results whenever I'm doing the actual videos of these. So for this one, we'll just do a near connection instead of jumping it directly to the next one. In that case, we'll actually do the full jump. And we're just continuing to move around, just dealing with the most egregious areas that are just too close together to let live. So this area can be reworked. This area, I'm going to make a revolutionary decision, actually slide it to its contemporary, which leaves us with this. So I press Alt V and disable wireframe, and we can see that there's one area that was missed just right here. We'll just slide that in, and we are done. So you see how right now, due to the way I modeled it, the sharpening information was kind of overwritten. Well, for that, there's actually a small Easter egg in Sharpen called Resharp. So let's go in object mode and let's press Q. And if we hover over Sharpen, you can see the hotkey for Control Shift click to recalculate. Resharp. Resharp was a feature I wanted to add long ago in Hops, and now it finally exists as a part of the Sharpen tool. So by Control Shift clicking it, you can basically recalculate the sharp information on the mesh, just remarking it the way it would be if you unmarked it and marked it again. So it's something I use every now and then, but every time I use it, I'm just glad it's there. So the next thing is we want to press Alt X, and we'll use symmetry to mirror this to the other side. In fact, we press Control Z, and we see what things looks like with just the inset without anything being treated. And then we see with it the result of us actually going in and just doing a little bit of work to just get things maintained. The other thing is that this area is taking away a lot of the perimeter. So I'm just going to slide that back up. Hopefully it will let me slide it. It's kind of a crazy set, but that should relax this area a little bit. I mean, we could solve this a little more efficiently by putting some edges in the middle and giving this some continuity. But generally for these things, it's not so important to me. Only if it's front and center as being problematic, then it's something that I'll generally go after. In fact, I could see a couple, and it's because you'll end up in these quandaries where you'll find yourself reworking an area, and sometimes to less result. So it's important to choose your battles. But we can see that battle was able to improve it for the better. So the next thing is I will just put a bevel on the mesh, and I'll press 1 in order to just adjust the auto smoothing. And we can see that now I get a nice smooth bevel in this area. And that's really the point of today's video, is to just talk about how you can actually use Inset to kind of quarantine an area in order to get the spacing you need for your bevels to survive. So there is a reason that tools like Knifebox exist and such, and that we work the way that we do. I mean, the goal isn't to get a perfectly subdivision friendly mesh, but definitely to get a finely shaded result that at least doesn't show any mesh artifacting issues visually whenever you're looking at the mesh in the form of presentation. So just to extend this video, because I was about to end it, we'll just press Control-1 and put a level of subdivision, and we see that subdivision really breaks down the shape, and that's because even though we defined a bit, we didn't define enough. So I have confidence that if I define this area will be solved, and if I define this, all of this area will be solved. And really, it's only just the most minimal of geometry that it takes to really guide subdivision. But I tend, when it comes to dealing with subdivision, I am one to come in and at least specify every other edge just to give it a little bit of information to kind of guide it. In fact, now we see that subdiv is able to be more capable here, but if we press Alt X, we can mirror it to the other side, and this is actually something a little bit better. However, for the sides here, we actually lose a little bit of our definition, but if we press Alt V and turn it off, it really isn't nothing to be concerned about. But let's say that we did want to actually deal with that. Well, for that reason, I will go in my helper and we'll just turn off subdivision bevel visibility for now, and we'll press Alt V to turn on wireframe. And for this, what I want to do is go into bevel, or actually control click bevel to add a new bevel, but instead we'll press 3 in order to add kind of this spacer bevel. And this bevel will just protect the perimeters. We can also see that it was inherited on the inside. So as we adjust it, we see that it doesn't make any change to shape, it just protects the parameters of the angles. So the next thing that we can do is actually put a triangulate modifier on it. If you use it from our Q menu, we'll automatically set up triangulate to only deal with n-gons, so it won't triangulate any quad geometry. And so now we actually have this more perfectly set up. So let's collapse the modifiers, and we see that we added a new bevel and a new triangulate. So let's move the subdivision down, and if we turn that on, we can see that that is our result. In fact, if we want to protect the perimeter more, we can just add a few more segments, but really our corners are pretty locked down. The other thing is that if we wanted to put subdivision on it, let's talk about that. We can go after the first bevel, and if we turn bevel back on, we can see that we're able to bevel. However, there's a good chance that we're going to bevel our first bevel that's protecting the perimeter. So by just bringing that in a little bit, we now have a nice rounded bevel on the outside. We have our perimeter protected. We have our n-gons triangulated, and we have this kind of automatic process for us to continue working on without causing any issues. And so if we wanted to really force this to work with subdivision, we can do so just with a creative use of our modifiers. So if I press Alt V, we can go back into wireframe. But as I always say, subdivision is a different type of auditor when compared to bevel. So when subdivision's involved, topological issues will definitely reflect on your surfacing. So there's a reason that you would want to choose either or instead of both, like I am in this situation. But hopefully this gives you a little bit more insight to how we deal with modifiers, how to deal with topological issues, how to manage multiple levels of bevels, as you see here, how to stack your modifiers in order to get a very specific look if you're trying to get this out to 3D Code or ZBrush. But most importantly, using insets in order to really space out things that you would normally be solving the hard way in order to solve it in a slightly easier way. So with that, I'll wrap up this video, and I'll see you guys. Actually, before I do that, let's Alt-M, slap it with the blanky blank material. Let's go in render mode and see what we get for the blank material. And that one's a pretty good one. We'll press Q, add a blank camera. Let's really get this camera in here. Floor S80 GZ -1. Let's also roll a blank material on the floor till we get one we like. We press Alt VV and just jump through different HDR environments that I have set up in my particular setup until we find one that we like. Turn off overlays, and this is what we're looking at so far. So we'll press Shift Spacebar to start rotating, but I want to give it, I don't know, 900 frames. So with that, we can press Alt V, go under blank light, really just roll through random light setups until we get an example that's worthy of showing. So with this shape, I probably still want to roll it through combinations even at the end here until I see something that I like. In fact, let's change this up to 9,000. For some reason, I like it when it rolls real slow. We could see the reflection kind of breaking due to the subdivision. In fact, I keep wanting to roll the materials, but I always want to give a material that's flattering to the shading. So let's actually turn off this one, turn off that one, and also turn off the first bevel. And we see actually the intended result. However, we also see that, you know, shading is always going to be a bit of a struggle. So I can't wait to show in future videos how there's other add-ons out there that are able to accelerate and ease this process at the expense of certain other rules being broken. But I wanted to at least show topological understanding and modifier control as far as making these sort of things work out when it comes to bevel and subdivision. And I hope that this has been something that's able to be informative to you, the viewer. And with that, we can wrap up this video, and I'll see you guys next time. All right. Almost was going to start going on another tangent about some other things. I mean, it's easier to wrap it short. You know, shout out to the extended cut gang. You know, I like seeing that not a lot of people are watching extended cuts. It lets me know that I can continue on this path, not have to get comments about video lengths and all that shit. So annoying. Just a guy that wants to talk about some hops, y'all. So also we mix this to mono. Let's make this a local file. Call this Topostudy4. All right. And so with this shape, it almost looks good. I mean, I just don't know. I feel like the lights betrayed me, but it could be a, and also I need to get these hotkeys for lights to be more like Look Dev World so they feel right. I mean, it could be the world that I'm into just not being cheerful enough. Like I probably just picked a bad world. In fact, I see that any other look probably would have been a better look for showing off this particular shape. But this is definitely one of the most troublesome of shapes. In fact, if we get in here, we look at this topo just one more time, we see that it's some of that tricky topo. In fact, my pet peeve is seeing modifiers in edit mode. I never want to see modifiers in edit mode. Only the truth of the mesh in edit mode. In fact, I didn't even merge the convergences, so I probably should do that. Just merge it last. You know, some things just can't be allowed to let live. And let's look at this in render first. I was about to mirror it, but let's look at side A and side B. I mean, is there anything to really notice with this? But I guess it's also important to tell people that Blender is not CAD. I mean, y'all are watching me solve this stuff by hand, but people always want this perfect CAD result, and you know, there's tools for that. Not us. I mean, we are CAD Arcade, but not trying to impact our tool's next ability to cut. That's something that is definitely essential to us, seeing that our other tool is a cutter. So we'd have to make some sort of normal tool and not even trying to deal with that, in which case you should probably just get Mesh Machine or mess with Bevel After Boolean, which I find to be a little fun. I mean, just to give a sneak peek of, you know, what I'll probably be talking about next is, you know, if we go in here and we hit it with a sphere cast, sometimes it's hard to remember, and we just duplicate these two shapes and we set up a difference. Let's make sure this one is at least shaded smooth. We can actually go under something called Bevel After Boolean, and they will actually bevel it for you and figure out the way to make it continuous. And while I like this tool quite a bit, I've been experimenting with it to see how I can make it work best for the type of things that I'm going for. But I have found some interesting use cases like so where, you know, since it rebuilds the area around it, I do like that. However, the density of the solution is something that I've always found to be slightly questionable. And also some of these surfacing limitations that I find afterwards. I mean, even using this in Mesh Machine, I don't want to do anything in a video disparaging another tool or anything, so definitely don't want to have any situations like that. But I mean, I do find good uses when I use them both together. However, the amount of solving and the type of solving is something that I don't know sometimes. I mean, it looks good to the naked eye, but it almost looks so broken that I would hate to deal with the sub-D counterparts of such a thing. But this thing actually works quite well. And, you know, in some cases I would default go to it, but, you know, like I always say, old habits die hard. And so while I do have a lot of love for this tool, I also have a lot of love for Mesh Machine too. So I'm always experimenting to see what's the best way to deal with, you know, having that control. I mean, let's turn off overlays again, and we got a pretty good looking result. However, I would have babied a slightly better result, I think. In fact, let's dissolve this. Like that one being so close, sometimes you gotta make a choice. And on this mesh, you know, such choices probably can't be made. I don't know if there's lock the normals or what. Something about the shading just let's roll it through a scroll or two and look at it in render. And I'm pretty sure I used it wrong, but having such a strange termination around the entire loop, I'm pretty sure that's why data transfer is also a solution that's being sought out in this thing as well. But yeah, I just want to make sure I show this tool in its best light, talk about it in a flattering way, so I'm not sounding like I'm disparaging any tool. Definitely do not want to do that, but this tool is definitely a fun time. I mean, let's bring in an icosphere and let's set up a difference, and let's set up a bevel. And even with this one, we probably got a most interesting result. And that's one thing that you got to give it to bevel after boolean for, is the results are just, they're worth showing up for. And we hit it with a little fuse action. I mean, this thing was an icosphere, but it was able to solve it. I mean, surface wise, not, I mean, at the end of the day, does this stuff matter? I mean, when you cut a hole in something that's the shape of a sphere, does that mean that you're probably going to fill it with the sphere? You know, just shade it with a sphere, just place a sphere in there, just make a duplicate version, and, you know, that fills that. I mean, the same thing with this thing, right? Like, would you be even worrying about what's on the inside? But I guess you would. You know, users are users, polygon abusers. They'll use these tools however they see fit. But anyways, that ends this rant. My video's already out, so I will just go ahead and wrap this and get that exported, and I'll see you guys later.